Hey there, science lovers and lab adventurers. Welcome to Superstat, the podcast where we step away from the bench to show you, yes, the lab is full of science, but also bursting with heart. We're your hosts. I'm Aaron, and this is Stephanie, and Melody.
Hi.
And we're here to remind you that behind every pipette, test tube, and instrument, that there's a whole lot of caring happening.
You might think that the lab is just about results and data, but we're here to tell you there's a whole lot more going on. From compassionate professionals who put their heart into every sample to stories that might make you look at the lab coat in a whole new way. We're here to spill the science and the feels.
Like the perfect solution, we're discovering where science and compassion mix. Let's get to it. Deep in the weeds though, let's give a shout out to all of y'all who watched our content and commented on our promo material.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That was amazing.
That was amazing. It was great to see you right out of the gate.
Yeah.
During Lab Week, amazing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, during Lab Week too. The excitement. I thought the best comment was from Anonymous on our name choice.
Yeah. And Anonymous's lab, Superstat, actually means a code word for their semen samples. Superstat is actually a play on words, y'all. There isn't a such thing as superstat, at least in my lab. What about you guys?
It's always on a blood culture or something.
You stole mine. No.
Esoteric send out test that's going to take 7 days to come back.
We want that statter than stat, superstat.
Stat right away.
That's our blood cultures too. Yeah, they're always like it's superstat, or our microcultures too. So I've got a infectious disease doctor. The joke with him is that, Aaron, we need that superstat. So he's like, we're going to shrink you down, or we need to put the culture in the microwave and boop, 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 and then cause it to grow real quick so we can get that result out superstat.
I think it just comes from them not understanding, like, there's instrumentation involved, and like we don't pull chemical reactions by hand, like for core lab, because I do chem, right? So, we don't pull those reactions by hand anymore, but we still have to do them on an instrument that's going to take like 20 minutes. Like I can't shorten that time frame. Like, it is what it is.
Well, just for our listeners who may not understand the name, we want you to know that this podcast will actually be Superstat. So we're going to give you information about our lab care system and about our profession in less than 20 minutes.
Which is way quicker than a stat. What we came to talk about, which is leadership, and how that can feel awkward at times. Much like you can feel awkward on the phone when they're telling you, hey, I need that superstat. And you have to be like, that's not a real thing. I don't know. I just feel like I get awkward as a lab person, sometimes because I'm not used to being so visible.
But how do you bring, although all laboratory people and all people actually, working in healthcare can be awkward sometimes, but that's just because we care so much. But how do you bring that strong leadership to what we do to be able to show advocacy and passion and care and all the things that we talked about in the beginning of this podcast to what we want people to know and understand of the laboratory?
I think for me, it's leading with a level of humble inquiry, like just going outside of my space and asking a lot of questions. And not in a way that's like pointed of like, why do you do that? But in a way that's like, help me understand why it seems like we have this like contention when we're ordering differentials in this department. Mm-hmm. Like, how are you using this information? Because it can really help me understand where I fit in the puzzle and how I can help. Mm-hmm. And that's an easy way to kind of get someone to see your leadership skills of like negotiating a solution and working toward like we're all on the same team mentalities and those types of things. I think that's an easy way to kind of get your foot in the door.
Yeah, I think at any level, being a lab leader, whether you're formal or informal, is about understanding that you play a huge role, like you just said, in lab visibility and lab advocacy. Because leaders set the normal tone, the natural tone for how we are represented, not just inside our department, but outside of our department. So in the whole hospital, we have to have that on stage and off stage behavior to know that as leaders, like I said, whether you're informal and you've got a formal title of supervisor or manager or lead tech, that you can influence how people perceive our lab and our values and our mission by the way you communicate, by the work that you do to build or break down relationships, and how you model yourself and then the work that we do. And that can be when you attend meetings, that can be when you are able to sit at specific tables. Every opportunity to have a conversation with someone is an opportunity to push recognition, push advocacy, and help integrate us into the larger healthcare picture.
Yeah, and I like the fact you mentioned that whether you have a title or you don't have a title, that you do have a role to play, that everyone has their voice that can be heard, that can actually make a difference, that can help people understand where we're coming from as lab professionals and even find out more about where we fit into the bigger picture. So if you're seeing an issue happen in the laboratory, well, what's going on the either the physical therapy or cardiology side? Why are you continuously seeing that issue? Maybe there's a process that the team doesn't really understand. So just actually giving your insight, asking the questions, no matter, and being a leader, no matter if you have a title or not, is an important thing to make sure people are aware of and know that they can do.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I actually think that in laboratories, the informal leaders are actually more critical than the formal leaders. Those are the people at the bench, at the forefront of things, who their teammates respect and who inspire their team and who set the tone for the shift and the department, and who can step up in times of trouble and explain our lab's impact directly to nurses and doctors and even patients sometimes. And people actually listen to them because, like I said, they're the informal leaders who have that voice of the people. They have the ability to humanize the work that we do, and the passion behind it, and build those personal relationships and garner respect and awareness from others, like sometimes leaders aren't able to,
I
even with
agree
a
with that.
title.
Well,
Kind
yeah,
of
I
like
mean,
street cred or
yeah,
lab cred.
street
Yep,
cred is
lab
exactly
cred.
right. Because if you
Hmm.
think about it, if you're getting your blood drawn, like who do you see? You see the phlebotomist.
Hmm.
You don't see the lab director, and like
Hmm.
if there's a trauma and you need emergency release, like who do you see? You see the blood bank technologist. You're not seeing the blood bank manager. I mean, maybe you are, depending on like what's going on in your trauma center, but you are empowered as that staff member to like be the face of the laboratory in those moments. Whether you think anyone's watching or not, they very well could be.
Yeah. I mean, I think advocacy is not a formal job, it's everybody's job. And so anyone, no matter what your title is able to transform the perception of laboratory being some black box in the basement and being behind the scenes, which sometimes we're really proud of that title, but sometimes it's important for us to recognize ourselves how vital we are, as being a trusted part of the patient care team, and how every day our actions and our conversations and our relationships that we build are important to our visibility and our advocacy. And that's really, the cornerstone and the heart of lab cares.
Yeah, I agree. And when you talked about our phlebotomists are people that are patient facing, those interactions that they have can determine whether patients want to come back to our lab or even want to continue on as our patients. So just making sure those team members know how vital they are is important. So in our lab, we actually on Fridays will go through a lot of the feedback we get from our patients. And when we have great stories, we'll make sure we tell the rest of the lab about how great some of our team members have been, and then also providing our frontline people who may feel stressed interacting with 200 or 300 people in a day, how much what they've done's impacted a patient and kind of made their day and their experience and made them come back.
Yeah, we've really been prioritizing like publishing projects that lab members are like innovating toward or working on or a big significant part of, because I think that that's something that's underrepresented, but it is a way that we demonstrate leadership, even if maybe the financial cost savings wasn't huge or but the patient outcomes were better, right? Or the solution worked in practice and it shaved off like scientist time or physician time. Like those are still valuable wins that I think as a leader, it's good to highlight and show like we are making change and we are moving forward. And these are our champions in the lab. And I think that can help inspire others.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, leadership is not a title. It's how you carry yourself. It's the pride that you have in what you do every day. And it's the awareness that you bring to our profession.
Gotcha.
Agreed.
And then, so to kind of get back to like internally, we may be leaders or seen that way, but outside the laboratory, we do handle it when, or how do we handle it when interdisciplinary teams may not really appreciate that our gloves are on and our hearts are open?
Oh, beakers and big feels. It's a real challenge.
Yeah. Test tubes and tender hearts.
Those centrifuges and compassion.
How do we get them to know? How will they
I
know?
don't know.
How will they know?
Tell us, lab leaders. We struggle with this every day.
I wanted a Whitney Houston moment right there, but I'm moving away. Okay, go ahead.
I think it's super important, and Melly and I have done talks on this before, that many lab people are introverted, but it's really important to step outside of yourself, and every interaction you have with another person in your clinic, in your facility, in your hospital, to take it as an opportunity to understand what they do and then share what you do, and try to find that gray area of where the two connect and start building those disciplinary, interdepartmental, inter-service line relationships, because the more people who understand who you are personally and what you do personally, they will thus understand our profession and what we do. A lot of the nurses that I knew them because they were people first, and then I understood what their profession or their specialty was. And so, step outside of the lab and let people know who you are. I know sometimes it's hard because we're introverted, at best ambiverted, but it's really important to show that, to help with that visibility.
Yeah, I think too, just being in a place where you can say, hey, I'm here, like raise your hand, in the meeting. Sometimes it's just enough to say, like, I'm here if anybody needs me or has a lab question. And then that's all you have to do. And they'll find you if they know that you're available to answer their questions. And don't underestimate the power of goodwill. It may seem like a small thing for the lab, like it's a very small process change for us to maybe like change the instructions for something in Lippincott, to help the nursing education team. It's like minor and it takes maybe 10 minutes for us, but they see that as a huge, huge like win and something that's really helped them. And so take the low hanging fruit too, right? Like do what you can to sow in some goodwill with those comments.
Yeah, I actually had that happen on Friday. One of the heads of pediatric nursing, I ran to her in the hallway, and she looks over at one of her fellow nurses and is like, "That's my lab person. That's my peds lab person." And it's just attending a meeting, answering questions, being available so they feel heard and they can work on processes. So that was kind of a cool moment. So, all right, guys, we're getting the call from the floor.
Oh no!
That's a wrap today on an episode of Superstat. Remember, whether you're wearing a lab coat or just listening in, you've got a part to play in making healthcare and the world a little better.
Yeah, I hope that we've left you a little bit inspired to lead your own journey and lead in your own way in the laboratory. But now we want to hear from you. How do you use leadership or whatever you do in the laboratory to articulate value in what you do in the lab and beyond? So drop us a message and let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback.
And most of all, keep caring, keep experimenting with what works for you and your lab, and keep leading in your own unique way. We'll catch you next time with more laboratory science and, of course, more heart. Stay curious, Lab Fam. Bye.